Well, with me, I'm going to have a conversation with Minister of Agriculture and Land Affairs, Minister Thoko Didiza. As you know that Uganda is one country that is very strong in terms of agriculture and land usage. You know that even livestock, they are really one of the leading countries on the continent in relation to agriculture. Yesterday, when I was talking to the President's advisor, that is President Museveni's advisor, he was telling me that there are lots of products that they would want to export, but unfortunately the challenge there is that in terms of industrialization, the manufacturing of containers, it's something that they are not good at, and therefore they are hoping that South Africa will assist them. And I know very well that Minister of Agriculture, Minister Thoko Didiza, will be able to speak to us, because I know at some point in time there were challenges with exports, particularly to Europe, and how you package and how you preserve the products that you send to Europe. And therefore South Africa has got experience in exports and imports, but particularly usage of containers. Minister, thank you for your time. Quite a very important visit. When I look at Uganda, having been there twice, it is a very green country, lots of agricultural land, both farming and in terms of stock and crop. Are you going to have a relationship strengthened perhaps in relation to agriculture?
Well, thank you very much, Sophie, and good morning to your listeners. Indeed, this is an important visit for us, South Africa, and in terms of our bilateral relations with Uganda. As you say, Uganda is very green and very large. In terms of productivity, they are very good when it comes to livestock issues, as well as crop production. Diversity in terms of what they produce, known for coffee in large measure, which is one of the crops that they produce and also export. So we do think that there are great possibilities for bilateral relations between South Africa and Uganda. But also, as you know, that we have the Africa-Continental Free Trade Agreement that allows for trading amongst African countries, and agriculture would be one of those, in my view, that would actually enable a lot of countries to trade with each other.
Minister, one thing that we learned, not only in South Africa or in the SADC region or in the continent around the world, is that when there's war, the issue of food shortage becomes critical, including fertilizers. Based on what we have experienced last year because of the war in Ukraine, how can the two countries work together to ensure food security on the continent?
Well, one of the things to ensure that in terms of support to our producers, to ensure that we're able to produce a majority of the food that our countries need, but also ensuring that we open up a trade relation such that we are able to trade with one another on those commodities that none of us may be able to be producing in each country.
What are the trade barriers, on the continent in general? I mean, I know South Africa, all these countries, most of these countries, we are the main country that is benefiting bilateral trade relations. But there are concerns that you have to ensure that you deal with the issue of trade imbalance, or to ensure that there's a trade balance between countries.
Well, I wouldn't actually say that South Africa has the positive trade balance with all the countries in the continent. It will depend on various commodities. Like other countries may be stronger on precious metals and minerals. Others may be stronger in agriculture and agro-processing, like in South Africa, for instance. But we still do trade. And one of the advantages is that a majority of African member states, apart from being part of the African Union, we also belong to a number of multilateral agencies that regulate trade in one way or the other. Apart from the WTO, we're also part of the OIE, which is actually an animal health standard setting body internationally, as well as on plant. Both South Africa and Uganda are part of those. So there's better alignment in terms of standards. One of the things, therefore, that when countries do trade with one another, you actually agree on a protocol and on the terms of trade, and you look at issues that might be of a challenge from each other. For instance, when it comes to animal products in terms of trade, you actually look at the animal health system of each country and how you can actually prevent transmission of diseases to the other, and how you would protect if there are certain diseases in particular regions of your country where you will deal with compartmentalization. So those protocols are usually worked at and agreed upon by countries, and that facilitates trade.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your time. All the best. That was Minister of Agriculture talking about the relationship between South Africa and Uganda when we look at trade in relation to agriculture. And as I pointed out, countries such as Uganda, Burundi, very, very green, and Rwanda included. When you look at the food production there, it is a region, the Great Lakes region, that the continent can depend on. But you have to address the issue of the political and security instability in the Great Lakes region, so that the potential of the Great Lakes region in terms of supply of food, but also, as Minister pointed out, mining and mineral resources can be unleashed. Africa is rich. Over to you, Desiree.
Sophie, while we still have you, you're talking about that political instability that sometimes includes human rights violations. You yourself have interviewed Bobby Wine here on the SABC News channel. How will these human rights issues be dealt with in this conversation?
Well, I think 5 years ago when I was in Rwanda, it was a meeting of the Great Lakes region member states and those who are involved in the Great Lakes region in an attempt to bring peace. At that time, the Minister of Defense was Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, who is currently the Speaker. And I did speak to President Museveni about that, and he pointed out that from his part, there is nothing wrong that he has been doing. But of course, when you speak to the opposition, it is a different story.